So you've been watching a couple of our videos, you're getting interested in moving offshore, and you are now pretty much convinced to move offshore. But what about your spouse? Let's talk about a couple of tips on what you can do to convince your spouse to go offshore. Hello everyone, I'm Irena from Nomad Capitalist, where we help people to go where they're treated best. So what we often see in our business is that there's a couple approaching us for help with either taxation or either getting a second passport or something like that. But there is usually one partner that is completely convinced to move offshore and another one that is not so sure. This is usually, of course, a big problem. I mean, this is your spouse that we're talking about. It's important to remember that you do have to be empathic and emotional because, well, both of you are pretty much leaving your family and friends behind, and not just that, but the locations as well. But again, important thing to remember, why are you doing that? Well, because you're in search for a better life. So let's hear about some of the tips, and not tips, but something I would do actually to just convince my spouse to move offshore with me. So the first thing that I would actually do is definitely to take a holiday. Not holiday, but actually to go into the country where I would like to move, just to show them around a bit, without actually bringing the idea of moving offshore beforehand to them. Anytime you're on a vacation, of course, it's different than actually living there. You're on a vacation, so everything is 100% better. That is why you need to make sure to combine those two. I would take them for vacation long, that is 1 month long, for example. For 2 weeks, we would explore the island, for example. We would go into adventures, we would go out to meet people, and we would actually act like we're on a vacation. But half of that vacation, I would make sure that we are actually trying to get our life in that place. So for example, I would join the gym, I would work while sitting on the beach, I would go to some expat's place and perhaps meet people who live in that area. And when your spouse is kind of in that element, it's not so hard for them to picture how would the life look like over there. After you're back, there is usually a post-vacation depression that would hit you, probably both of you. And that is the point when I would definitely just pitch the idea of moving to the place where we've been, for example. After that, of course, that would come as a shock, and that would be pretty much emotional to just the idea of leaving your home and leaving your family, your friends, and work, anything really. Again, that's quite an emotional process. But what's important is to show on why you're even thinking that. So the first thing is, if you are moving to some country, some other country before, because your country where you currently live in, for example, has become much more expensive, you need to show the spouse on what would be the goal for you. The goal for us would be to save money, and here's how we're going to do that. You can start that by showing them properties. Go over the properties and see some of the properties you can rent, some of the properties that you can purchase, and show them the compared price to actually the property that you're currently living in, for example. If the money is actually not that much of a problem, then show them 10 times beautiful house than the house that you currently live in, and that should be enough to convince them to move offshore. Of course, it all depends on what your spouse really enjoys doing. Of course, you won't choose, if your partner really loves the beach and some of the tropical areas or something, you won't take them to Alps in Switzerland or anything, because that would be 100% harder to convince them to go there than, for example, to some very nice vacation and tropical place. When you go over properties together, try picture your life there together. Try picturing on where the workroom would be, where you can set, I don't know, a gym, for example, small gym for you, where you would go for a run, where would your car be parked, where, for example, is the nearest library or anything like that that your spouse really loves to do. You can make sure that it's around the area where you're searching for the property. That should kind of, again, help them to picture their life in that place. Usually, it's of course much easier for the spouse to move abroad when something is wrong with the country where they currently live in. So, for example, if I live in the UK, I would probably complain the whole time about the weather and about how rainy it is and everything like that. If I hate that, I would probably move somewhere that is more tropical or something like that. It can be vice versa as well. The weather is, of course, just an example, but you shouldn't be the one that would say, oh my God, it's raining again or anything like that. But there are the bad sides that your partner is probably complaining about the whole time in the country where you currently live in. Show them how the country where you are about to move to is different than that. So if you're complaining about the weather the whole time, and if I say that I want to go somewhere where it's more sunny and the people are more friendly, then I would probably go to, I don't know, to Indonesia or to Malaysia or something like that. that would, if you ask me now, I would move there immediately. But if you ask me now to move to the UK, I would probably say no. So just make sure that the things that your spouse is not happy about in the country where you're currently living at, that another country obviously has that. The one thing that is important is that you will often see, and you probably heard about a lot of, for example, ultimatums or anything like that. Avoid that. That is not a good way to convince your spouse to move abroad. You will often hear that somebody said, well, I said either move with me or, I'm going alone or anything like that. That's not a good way to go. Again, that is an emotional process of moving away offshore, and you're pretty much going there alone without any friends, without any family. You don't know where you're, in what part you're stepping into or anything. You don't have any friends there or anything. So that's quite emotional. That can be quite stressful. It's important that you are not alone with it and that your spouse is not alone with it. You need someone by your side that would make it pretty easy to involve into the new life and new opportunity. The next thing is that you need to make sure is to plan ahead and to set goals together. The reason on why you want to move abroad is very important. And the reason, again, like we talked about, your spouse may want to move abroad is also helpful. But if the reason, again, for that is that the country where you currently live is too expensive, show them how much you'd save. So during the year, we would save, I don't know, $100,000 if we moved from the US to Georgia, for example. That $100,000 can be used in which purpose? Let's open a new business. Let's purchase a property. Let's do this. Let's do that. So just offer a path on what you can get in return if you want to move to some other country. If, for example, the tax is the reason, hey, the taxes are too high in the UK, let's go and live somewhere else. There are a lot of countries worldwide, and especially in the EU, that would allow you, obviously, to file the tax return jointly. And with that, you get some deductions. So that may be a plus, and that may convince your spouse that says, yes, let's do it. We would save on taxes. Another thing that you can do is that you don't have to immediately say, let's go and move and just leave everything and never come back. That's not a possibility in most of the cases, and that's not very good, and again, it's very stressful. But again, when you took them on a vacation in the first place, after that, when you start talking, start developing the idea on how often you'd go back to your country, visit your family, visit your friends, how often your friends would be able to come to your country, how often would you be able to meet up somewhere in between and go to have some nice vacation or anything like that. Apart from that, you don't have to immediately move there. Why you don't start with some residency, let's say? You can say, hey, you know what? In Armenia, it's pretty easy to get residency and it's pretty cheap. Why don't we just get residency as a plan B? Have that as a plan B option. In time, go there, visit Armenia, visit and see if you like it and if your spouse like it, and if they can picture their life there. In time, you will see that your spouse is slowly adapting to that. If you do not have time, then I would recommend talking to your spouse really and try to convince them to go somewhere. But if you have time and if you're not in a rush, take on residency first and see if you can picture yourself living there, if your spouse can picture herself living there. If not, why not? You can always have a second residency or a second citizenship or anything like that. One more time, that one thing to keep in mind is that you cannot skip any steps. You have to go step by step. Try to, again, picture your life together. What we often see is that people can see themselves living in some other country. I can now right now see myself living in Indonesia, in Bali, on the beach, and oh my God, the life is amazing. Again, that's usually not like that. The first thing that I would do is go there, spend some time there, spend at least 6 months there. Try to give yourself space and time to adapt to the lifestyle over there, because that's not the same. To try the local food, to see how you would react to the climate changes, to different climate in that country or anything like that. And then after that, you can slowly, again, step by step, decide on when and where you would move. And the same goes with your spouse. You have to go step by step with your spouse as well. All in all, again, moving offshore can be a very emotional and stressful process. And you should make sure that, again, you show the empathy and you show how emotional you are to your partner. Your partner is probably under a lot of stress. They cannot picture their life anywhere outside of the place where they currently live in. They will leave their families, they will leave their friends behind, they will leave their car, or they would sell their car, they would sell their house. That can be quite emotional. Take a deep breath, go step by step, and at the end, everything revolves about the fact that you are taking them to a better place and the place where they're treated best. Trust me when I say that you're not the only one who is experiencing this. We at Nomad Capitalist really help the hundreds of couples to go and to move offshore. Again, it's not about the place where you want to go to, but it's about the place where you both of you want to move to. In case that you don't have a perfect idea on where you want to go, we're here to find a country that would suit you both perfectly and that would help you to convince your spouse to move offshore. Not only that, but anything that you don't want to leave behind, books, jewelry, couch, or the car, or anything like that. We're also there to help you to move that to your new country.